All right, last Sunday in our series on Unity Basics that we're doing in honor of our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who were both born during August. And we've been taking an in-depth look at what are known as our 5 basic principles, which are exactly that. They're principles. They're not a statement of faith. They're not a creed. They're not a catechism. So here are the first 4 that we've covered so far. Number 1, God is the name we give to the source and essence of all that is. There is no other enduring power. Number 2, God as source and essence of all that is means that human beings are expressions of God. Number 3, our thoughts create our experience of life. Number 4, prayer is creative thinking that puts us in touch with what it means to be an expression of God. And finally, number 5, the all-important action step. Knowing and understanding these principles is not enough. We must live them. All of these principles work together. You may have started noticing that. They are logically and systematically tied together, and they build on each other. Starting with the first one, we embrace all of reality as emanating from the inexorable, unchangeable principle that is the source and the essence of all existence. We don't carve the universe up into God and not God, because, after all, our name is unity, right? If we carve all of existence up into God and not God, that's not unity. That's what's known as duality. And so we don't go there. And then the second principle simply recognizes that all of nature, including human beings, are a part of that source and essence. That source and essence is us, which is a major departure from many traditional forms of religion, which regard human beings as depraved, worthless sinners from the first moment of life and that kind of thing. We don't teach original sin, we teach original perfection. A child comes into the world with no knowledge of what we call good and evil. There's that song from South Pacific, you have to be carefully taught. That kind of stuff has to be taught. That's learned later. And if it can be learned, then it can be unlearned. The second principle says that even though we may not be coextensive with God, we do possess the awesome, I think underappreciated and something we take for granted, the power of self-reflective consciousness, which means we can create. We can create. We are co-creators by right of consciousness, is what that's telling us. Even though we arise out of the natural world, we can bring things into existence that you don't find in the natural world. We create the realm of our values. We create art, philosophy, literature, music, technology, you name it. And that takes us to the third principle, which says that that power of consciousness creates our experience of life. We don't create our own reality. That is a New Age myth. What we do create is our experience of reality. Eric Butterworth was a major figure in the Unity movement. He was a Unity minister, he was a best-selling author, and he represented the thinking of the generation that immediately followed Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And he has a quote from his book, Discover the Power Within You, that I think says it best. He says, things may happen around you, things may happen to you, but the only things that really count are the things that happen in you. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control what we think about what happens, and what we are thinking is our life at any particular moment. That's big. Again, that's from his best-selling book, Discover the Power Within You. We create our experience of life. So, we want to make every effort to ensure that the experience we are creating is the very best for ourselves and for everyone around us who gets drawn into our experience. We are literally creating heaven and hell right here on earth, and it starts at the level of consciousness. It starts with thoughts. So, again, building, weaving it together. This means that it's vitally important that we monitor and modify our thought process, because our creativity is so very powerful. And with great power comes great responsibility. Isaac Asimov, I think I have his quote up here. Isaac Asimov, the great science fiction author, once said that the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than society gathers wisdom. And this whole thing about being ready for the future is making sure that we are gathering wisdom at least as fast as we're gathering knowledge. And it's going to take a shift in consciousness and a change in attitude to do that. History is full of examples of how the power of creativity, and especially the power of the new technology that we create, can be used in opposite ways, polar opposite ways. For example, nuclear power. As soon as Einstein published his first paper, physicists all saw the potential for an energy source or a weapon. And we all know which one was made first. We went for the weapon. There's gunpowder. Gunpowder can be used to make beautiful fireworks, or cannons, guns. And I could go on, but you get the idea. We always face a choice. What are we going to do with our technology? What are we going to do with this awesome power of creation? We have a choice, and we want to choose wisely. So we get to our fourth principle, which is about cultivating wisdom. Our fourth principle, prayer, is creative thinking that puts us in touch with what it means to be an expression of God. And Unity defines prayer in a way that's vastly different from the way we normally hear it used. We say that prayer is a consciousness conditioning tool. We use prayer to change one thing and one thing only. Not the stuff around us, but we use it to change our own consciousness. A consciousness conditioning tool that we use to cultivate wisdom. And really the first step on the road to wisdom is to cultivate a deep sense of self-awareness. We want to start seeing our subconscious conditioning, our drives. We want a deep sense of self-awareness. And so far, the best tool for doing that is meditation. In many spiritual traditions, including Unity, meditation is a form of prayer. We practice. We practice of observing our thought process so we don't get swept away in it. We practice so that we can learn how to begin to exercise a degree of conscious control over those very important thoughts that eventually turn into words and eventually turn into actions and turn into, again, our values, our philosophy, and our technology. So that brings us to the fifth principle, the action step. Knowing and understanding isn't enough. We have to live them. Cultivating that deep sense of self-awareness, it takes commitment, it takes action, it takes practice. And again, it's vitally important that we tap into this source of wisdom, because the technology we were talking about before, it's going to keep on going faster and faster and faster. And we need to be building that deep reservoir of wisdom if we want to be ready for what the future is going to bring. One author put it this way. He calls it birthing a greater reality. That's the title of a book by Reverend Robert Brummett that we worked with a few years ago. Robert was one of our professors at Unity Institute, and we've probably known him for over 14 years now. And he just has a wonderful way of weaving together Unity principles, modern psychology, Eastern wisdom, and things like that. And the core message of this book can be summed up in 2 words. Wake up. Wake up. Wise choices are made by those who are awake and aware of how they show up in the world. In the book, Robert makes this very interesting observation. He talks about the second creation story that we find in Genesis, about how God caused Adam to fall asleep. Of course, it was so he could supposedly take the rib and make Eve and all that stuff. But the thing is, he caused Adam to go into a deep sleep. And nowhere in the story does it say that Adam ever woke up. Adam symbolizes humankind. Still asleep. That's the cause of all the challenges that we face. And incidentally, what he's doing there is an excellent example of how unity interprets the Bible. We get beyond a shallow and literal understanding of the story to arrive at a deeper insight into human nature. That's what it's all about. It's a great metaphor for the current state of humankind. We're sound asleep. That's the main reason why people do so many things that we call evil, cruel, or just plain inconsiderate, right? Unless they're mentally ill, nobody wants to do things that would harm others. If we knew better, we would do better. And the fact of the matter is that we can do better, we can know better. So why do we have this tendency to remain asleep? Isn't that interesting? You ever notice how every alarm clock or every clock radio has a snooze bar on it? You can reach out there and you can hit that sucker as many times as you want. You can sleep for as long as you want. And from an evolutionary standpoint, it goes all the way back to how human beings learned how to survive. The odds were stacked against us. Our ancient ancestors, think about it, they were not the fastest or the strongest. To this day, we do not have much in the way of claws or teeth or fur to protect us and keep us warm. And what we lacked in teeth and claws, we made up for with brain power. That was the idea. The ability to think is what put us at the top of the food chain. And it's also the thing that keeps us asleep. Nobody is saying we need to stop thinking. But what we need to start seeing is how we are using our mind to create a model of reality. We create a model of reality that we believe is designed to keep us safe. We create a model of reality that's designed to help us to dominate our environment. And while creating the model is useful and essential, there are always side effects. And the side effects of that particular survival model is it keeps us fearful, suspicious, and separate. We're asleep in the model. Instead of using the model of reality as a tool to help us, we've allowed it to master us and run the show. That's what's going on. It's a good survival strategy as far as that goes, but that's all it is. As long as we are exclusively identified with our survival strategies, we remain asleep. And here's the kicker. This waking up stuff, it's not just a one-time thing. Over the course of human history, we have developed multiple survival strategies, new models. Each one serves a purpose. It helps us to survive, and then it becomes a problem. We have to move on to something else, and so the cycle goes on and on. The future is relentless, and just when we think we've got something figured out, the rug gets pulled out from under us. So it's an ongoing process, this waking up, and we can use the 5 principles in a very practical way to keep ourselves moving. Because again, if we're honest with ourselves, it really is more comfortable just to go back to sleep, right? Hit that snooze bar, go back to sleep, kind of sink into our comfortable old survival strategies instead of asking the all-important question of who's in charge here. Are my survival strategies managing me, or do I see them for what they are and take responsibility for them and move on where necessary? This is an important step for humankind to take, and the 5 principles can really help us to do that. We can use them as a reminder. We can use them as a checklist or as a guide to action. So we start with the first two. The first two principles remind us of who we are and where we come from. Again, God is the name we give to the source and essence of all that is. There is no other enduring power. That's where we come from, and who we are is expressions of God. Got to start with that. We have to know that at a deep level, but we can't stop there. We move on to our third principle, which is a reminder of the power we have of co-creation. We remember that our thoughts create our experience of life. We add to that the power of consciousness enables us to bring into existence many things we don't find in nature. With great power comes great responsibility. The physical realm of our ideas can be used to discover all sorts of things like we mentioned before, gunpowder and nuclear energy with the potential for creation and destruction. So we want to look at these powers carefully and stop taking them for granted, which takes us into our fourth principle. Taking responsibility for how we use our power, developing wisdom, prayer, creative thinking that puts us in touch with what it means to be an expression of God, something that keeps our responsibility of our consciousness, which is what being awake is all about. That's the waking up step. And then we come to number 5. We repeat again and again. It's like the instructions you find on a bottle of shampoo, right? Apply, rinse, repeat, right? There you go. Again and again until it becomes a permanent part of our lives. Remember, practice doesn't make perfect. We don't have to strive for perfection. In fact, if we strive for perfection, we're going to set ourselves up for frustration. And like I was mentioning last week, that's just a tool of the ego to keep us from doing something that we need to do. Hey, if I can't be perfect at it, then I'm just going to stop. Just practice. Take perfect out of the picture. Practice makes permanent. We won't always get it perfect. We're gonna nod off from time to time. We're gonna slap that snooze bar from time to time. But if we work with these principles and keep them somewhere in the forefront of our consciousness, or put on the refrigerator with a magnet, or whatever it takes, we're always able to get back on track if we remember to practice and to go through these principles as a checklist. So, thank you to Charles and Myrtle Fillmore for giving us the foundation. The rest is up to us. And we're going to end this series with a quote from Myrtle Fillmore that I just love, that I try to get out at least once a year. So this is from Myrtle. She says, "So get busy by using the truth you know. Love those about you in a practical way. Pay no attention to what others are doing insofar as to make comparisons. Bring forth your own joyous world of love, friendship, beauty, and plenty. God is giving everything required to build such a world. There is within you the God-given intelligence to build such a world." Get at it. And I'll see you all in September.